Calls for the BBC Director General Tim Davie to resign are mounting thick and fast after another memo that was written to the BBC has been leaked to the Telegraph. There was a second memo. It wasn't just Michael Prescott writing to the BBC. There was also Sir Vernon Bognador, who is a former Oxford professor. He wrote to the BBC with a long list of concerns about their coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. He met with them twice, but he claims his concerns were completely dismissed and swept under the carpet. Let's take a look at some of the details. So Sir Vernon Bognador, he's calling for Tim Davie to resign with immediate effect. He's absolutely furious. He claims the BBC ignored internal reports that made allegations of distortion and bias in its journalism. Here he is in Christchurch College, Oxford. Let's take a look at some of the detail of what he said in his memo to the BBC. He accused the BBC of inaccurate reporting on both the mainstream BBC service and the Arabic service, and he gave a long number of examples of that. If you go to the Telegraph website, and I will link their article down below in the description, you will see a long list of examples of complete failures by the BBC that he put in his memo. He questioned the fact that the BBC refused to label Hamas a terrorist organisation for a long time. And he also put in his report the fact that the BBC accused Israel of carrying out summary executions, which it later ended up retracting. And the BBC's acceptance, like many media outlets, of the Hamas-run health ministry's death toll, which fails to distinguish between people who are actually civilians and people who are Hamas militants. He said the BBC needs to distinguish how many amongst the casualties are combatants from Hamas. The BBC just takes whatever Hamas says and takes it as truth. You would expect better from our national broadcaster. Now, he handed over this memo in May 2024. He met twice with Richard Burgess, who is the director of BBC News content. So this isn't just some angry BBC viewer, some nobody who's just sent in a letter that they've, quite rightly ignored because they get a lot of messages and a lot of mail. He met twice with the director of the BBC News content. This guy isn't some nobody, but was ignored, apparently. So this guy, Sir Vernon Bognador, he tells the Telegraph, in my view, Tim Davie should resign and the government should institute an inquiry into the organisation of BBC News. The leaders of the BBC seem to have ignored internal reports pointing out distortion and bias. So Sir Vernon Bognador, he leaked his conversations, his memo to the BBC after he saw the other day the story blow up of Michael Prescott's leaked memo to the BBC, and he realised, wow, it wasn't just me who was calling out for change and calling out for the BBC to change their ways and right the record. It was Michael Prescott as well, and both of us are in the same situation. He says that with regards to the Middle East coverage, quote, it is not only the Arabic service which has been inaccurate, but also mainstream BBC. Now, the BBC claims it issued him with a reply, but he insists that nothing happened in the wake of his meeting with Mr. Burgess, and said, so the outcome is that many BBC viewers believe Israel committed genocide and deliberately caused a famine, two accusations which are at least debatable. And you know what? It really has had a big effect, the BBC, the way that they have covered this war, because I find it really frustrating when I talk to normal members of the public who, don't have the time to read every single detail of the news and really read a million different sources, who just see a few headlines. It's hard to engage with them over the conflict in Gaza, because they are dead certain, because they read it in the reputable BBC, they are dead certain Israel is committing a genocide. Israel is just killing babies and women just for the fun of it, when they don't even need to. They're not side effects. It's not a reasonable side effect of war that you see in every war. They're like, oh, they're deliberately going out of their way to murder innocent civilians, because that's what they read. That's what they read. That people have really been brainwashed by this coverage. And of course, in the original first memo from Sir Michael Prescott, there was the huge controversy as well about that Trump speech, where they took one part of a sentence from one part of his speech and another from 54 minutes later in the speech and put them together to make it sound like he was inciting riots. The Trump team, they found out about this and they are not happy at all. So hence there is a lot of pressure on Tim Davie to resign. Let's not forget that Trump sued CBS. Was it CBS? CBS for the 60 Minutes documentary for, I think, $13 million. Let's take a look at what Caroline Leavitt, Trump's press secretary, had to say about the BBC in response to this. She's not held back at all. This woman's great. She's like 27, 28 years old, by the way, and she's absolutely smashing it. She says the broadcaster was a propaganda machine, she says this purposefully dishonest, selectively edited clip by the BBC is further evidence that they are a total 100% fake news that should no longer be worth the time on the television screens of the great people of the United Kingdom. Oof! Damn, absolutely brutal. How does Tim Davie come back from that? I'm sorry, Tim, but it is time for you to go. And it's not just over in the US where big people are calling for his resignation. Boris has reappeared, and Boris is claiming that he's going to boycott the BBC licence fee if Tim Davie doesn't come out with some sort of very convincing explanation for these leaked memos that were ignored, and he's urging other people to boycott it. Boris is telling other people, he's saying, I'm going to stop paying my licence fee and I urge you to as well, unless Tim Davie resigns or gives a pretty damn good explanation for this. And apparently Nigel Farage is going to be meeting with Tim Davie face to face to give him a grilling on this in the next few days. The Telegraph are reporting. Nigel has said, I will be meeting with Tim Davie in the next few days, at which I will be expressing my grave concern over the levels of institutional bias as revealed by these reports. He says, I will ask him why we should be paying an increased licence fee, rumoured to be £181, to receive this level of indoctrination. I want to know whether he accepts what is going on and is making genuine changes, or will it just be swept under the carpet? So pretty strong words from Nigel Farage there, accusing Tim Davie and the BBC of indoctrination. That's going to be an interesting meeting. I'm very interested to see what comes out of that. Anyway, that is the latest, my friends, on the BBC bias row. Make sure if you haven't already, you hit that subscribe button down below. Helps us out, completely free, and means you'll see more of our content, so you don't want to miss out, do you? Thanks very much for watching. See you all soon.